A giant predator cloaked in pure white, the phantom of the frozen north. The polar bear is more than just powerful. It's invisible when it needs to be, a silent ghost that waits for the perfect moment to kill. But how can a single creature force an entire frozen ocean to move with caution? Let's uncover the secrets of the apex predator of the Arctic, a realm where only the most resilient survive.
Hit like and subscribe. This is Fierce.
Not only is it the largest bear on Earth, the polar bear is a relentless hunting machine, forged in sub-zero silence. Stretching up to 10 feet long and weighing as much as 1,500 pounds, it doesn't wander aimlessly across the frozen ocean. This is its kingdom. A white battlefield where weakness is erased by wind and ice. There are no trees here, no berries, only flesh-tearing winds and a few desperate lives clinging to existence. The polar bear hunts not for sport, but for survival. It stalks in silence, striking like a ghost, swift, sudden, and surgical. Where it walks, there is no luxury, only hunger and instinct sharpened by millennia. Below the frozen surface, danger swims in silence. Beluga whales, massive mammals up to 13 feet long and 2,000 pounds, must surface to breathe, and the polar bear waits. The sea is sealed tight, except for scattered breathing holes. The bear stands still, part of the ice itself. Then, it strikes. A white flash, precise, sudden, brutal. Not always successful, but always calculated. In the open sea, the odds shift, but the bear watches the tide and waits for opportunity. Just one calf, separated from its group, can mean everything. Every attack is a gamble. Even a small kill can mean the difference between life and death in this frozen desert. Beneath the thin Arctic ice swims a myth come alive. The narwhal, the unicorn of the sea. 13 to 18 feet long, up to 3,500 pounds, its spiraled tusk piercing through the silence of the deep. With mottled gray and black skin, it's built for camouflage. They travel in pods, surfacing for air, and once again, the polar bear waits. Encounters between bear and narwhal are rare, but when they happen, they're unforgettable. With claws like ice picks and the strength to rival ocean currents, a polar bear can haul a narwhal up through the ice. Even scavenged narwhal carcasses are prized treasures in a world of scarcity. A chilling reminder of the polar bear's dominance, back to its most familiar prey, the seal. Agile, wary, but still chained to air, with only a few small breathing holes on the ice, the bear lies in wait, a white shadow against the snow. Hours pass, stillness, then one strike, timed perfectly. A full day's survival, won or lost in 1 second. As the ice melts, the rules change. Now, the bear crawls low, melting into the snow. One misstep, and the seal vanishes into the sea. But even in open water, the polar bear adapts. It becomes a submerged predator, diving deep, swimming silently, approaching from below. Then, a sudden burst, a precision strike, a hunt of patience shaped by seconds. Hesitate, and the Arctic swallows everything. But not all prey is small. Sometimes the bear sets its sights higher, on the giants of the ice, the walrus, 10 feet long, 2,000 pounds, protected by skin nearly 4 inches thick and a set of deadly tusks. On land, they look sluggish, but make no mistake, these are armored beasts. Their bulk slows their escape to the sea, and in that fleeting moment, the bear may gamble everything. Only the hungriest or the most desperate will risk it. As summer arrives, the Arctic melts and shifts. This is the polar bear's hardest season. Prey becomes scarce, hunting grows harder. Now the bear must climb sheer cliffs, seeking seabird nests. A risky journey, but sometimes the only option. Occasionally, fortune drifts ashore. A whale carcass, an unexpected gift, a feast in a season of famine. A full-grown polar bear can eat over 130 pounds in one sitting. A lifeline stretched over weeks of hunger, but sometimes even the strongest reach their limit. When starvation looms, nature makes impossible choices. In the harshest Arctic corners, male bears have been known to kill cubs that aren't their own, eliminating competition and pushing females back into breeding readiness. In extreme cases, even mothers, pushed to the edge, have turned against their young. Rare, but real. In this realm, maternal instinct bows to survival. On the fringes of the tundra, polar bears and Arctic wolves sometimes cross paths, but wolves know their place. A single step forward from a bear is usually all it takes to send an entire pack into retreat. No snarling, no show, just raw dominance. For most of the year, the polar bear is a solitary force. But in late spring, during mating season, two hunters may briefly become partners. Males follow scent trails across miles of snow and ice, searching for a receptive female. They may stay together for days, sometimes even weeks, then part ways. The female carries a fertilized egg, but implantation only occurs if her body holds enough fat. If not, the pregnancy fades. When winter comes, she digs a den and disappears beneath the snow. There, in absolute silence, she gives birth to up to 3 cubs, tiny, blind, and helpless. She does not eat or drink for 3 months. Her body sustains them from the fat she stored last season. When spring returns, she emerges, cubs in tow, into a world where nothing is guaranteed. From silent ambushes beneath the ice to scaling cliffs in summer, the polar bear survives by strength, strategy, and sheer determination. Each step across the ice writes another chapter in a survival story as old as the Arctic itself. The polar bear doesn't just survive here, it reigns.
The British Schools Exploring Society was founded in 1930 by British Royal Navy officer and Antarctic explorer Robert Scott. The charity's mission was to offer adventure to school children, and in 2011, the expedition became an adventure unlike any other. 80 lucky youngsters, ages 16 to 25, were chosen to venture to the Arctic that year. The expedition promised to be the adventure of a lifetime, creating lasting memories while exploring an unequaled wilderness. One of those youngsters was 17-year-old Eton schoolboy Horatio Chapple, who was eager to broaden his horizons and explore the world beyond the classroom. Horatio, like all expedition members, first had to attend a training weekend. This took place in April 2011. It was where Horatio would first learn about the dangers of polar bears. Polar bears are the largest and most powerful carnivores on land. They can stand 5 feet at the shoulder and weigh up to 1,800 pounds. To prepare the group, the British Schools Exploring Society would provide every explorer with a pen flare, a device that shoots flares up to 50 meters to frighten approaching bears, and the expedition leaders would carry rifles in case of an emergency. Additionally, they would set up tripwires around the campsite. If triggered, these wires would set off explosives which are meant to scare away furious bears. Horatio's mother and father, both medical doctors, had examined the safety protocols and risk assessments in detail. His mother was particularly worried about the higher risk of bears, but was reassured by the safety precautions the team would be taking. But things didn't go according to plan. On July 23, 2011, the expedition began. They arrived in Longyearbyen, the world's northernmost town, on Norway's Svalbard archipelago, and excitement filled the air. The team had been waiting so long for this adventure, and now it had finally arrived. The next day, they headed towards the Von Post Glacier, about 25 miles from Longyearbyen. This was where they would be exploring and conducting some scientific research. The beauty of the place was breathtaking. It had a magical feel to it. Pristine fjords reflecting the icy mountains on their mirror-like surface, peace and tranquility, and nothing but miles upon miles of wilderness. It was more than anything Horatio and his teammates could have imagined. But with isolation comes danger. And out on the glaciers of Svalbard, you're never far from danger. Polar bears are constantly on the hunt, surviving in this harsh environment where anything and anyone is considered prey. A polar bear encounter was scored as the highest risk on the risk assessment form Horatio's mother inspected before he left. Unfortunately, things were about to take a turn for the worse, and the flawless safety record held by the British Schools Exploring Society was on the brink of being shattered. The team and their equipment were loaded onto boats and motored across the fjord to the Von Post Glacier. The group was split into smaller groups, each with 2 team leaders. These leaders had experience with Arctic expeditions, but their proficiency with the Mauser 98K rifles dating back to World War II, was quite limited. There were rifles for each group, but no extras. There weren't nearly enough flares, meaning not all of the young explorers would be able to carry them, and several stakes for the tripwires were missing. As the leader, Payne had to make do with the hand he was dealt. They got to work setting up camp. After the first few nights, Richard decided to make a change. He swapped the original tripwire from fishing line to a heavy-duty braided fluorescent cord, as the system was getting set off too easily. Unnecessary explosions in the night were ruining the group's sleep, and they were wasting valuable charges. Due to the lack of mines they had, they also decided to set the camp up in a triangular formation, rather than the advised rectangular shape. This meant that Horatio's group only had 3 mines instead of 4. The days were filled with exploration, learning outdoor skills, participating in scientific research projects, and developing personal resilience. At the end of the day, the groups would head back to their camps, refuel with dinner, and then sink down in their sleeping bags for the night. It was an exhausting yet exhilarating experience that the youngsters relished. But in the early hours of August 5th, something went horribly wrong. Polar bears hunt for seals on the ice, and it wasn't long before the team spotted a lone bear. It was floating on the ice some distance away. For most, it was an incredible sighting, something to marvel at. How many people can say they've seen a wild polar bear before? But for the leaders, this meant that the danger had now ramped up. On August 4th, Horatio had spotted an enormous footprint in the snow as he and the others made their way back to the camp. It was clearly the mark of a polar bear, and they quickly spun around, scanning the horizon for any sign of the creature, but there was nothing in sight. This was yet another warning that they were very much inside bear country, and if things went wrong, then help was a very, very long way away. That night, Horatio and his friends turned into their tents for the night. Undressing and slipping into his sleeping bag, it wasn't long before Horatio and the others were fast asleep. But the team leaders had made a fatal error. That night, they skipped posting a night watchman, a routine they followed every evening. They chose not to do so this time, as they had a long trek ahead the next day, and the fatigue and intense cold of the watch would hinder some of the team members. It was a decision that would prove to be fatal. A thin, malnourished, starving polar bear approached the camp. It picked up the scent of the campers from miles away and had come searching for an easy meal. As the bear lumbered into camp, it knocked one of the posts holding up the tripwire, and the wire crumpled to the ground. The charges didn't go off. The hungry bear walked silently, undetected, toward Horatio's tent. Patrick opened his eyes as he heard something in his sleep. It was a guttural growl. He hoped it was only a dream. He prayed that he had misheard it, but there it was again. Then it pounced onto Horatio. He began screaming and tried to fight back. But the bear sunk its teeth into his skin, clasping his skull tightly in its powerful jaws. Horatio kicked and punched with all his might. He could feel the pressure building in his skull. Then the bear began dragging him out of the tent. By now, the screams and cries for help had woken everyone in the camp. 31-year-old science leader Michael Reed grabbed a rifle and rushed outside. There he was met with a horrific sight. He could clearly see the polar bear by Horatio's tent. Underneath it was Horatio in his boxers, partly kneeling, entirely at the mercy of the bear. The bear was raising itself up and then slamming itself back down on top of its victim. Reed quickly took aim. He knew he had to be precise, otherwise he risked hitting the boy, who had now crumpled to the ground. He took a breath and squeezed the trigger. But the gun didn't fire. Instead, the cartridge fell out onto the snow. Michael tried again and again, but each time the cartridge was ejected. By now, the bear had noticed him and galloped towards him. Michael had nowhere to hide. Within seconds, the bear was pouncing on him. He shouted for someone to fire the pen flares, but he hadn't told anyone where he had hidden them. The bear bit down on his head. He could hear the crunch as it cracked bone. At that point, mountain leader Andrew Ruck raced toward the bear. The bear launched an attack on him, throwing him to the ground and biting down on his face. Its massive paws swiped at his head, its claws slicing into his flesh. Then the bear ran back towards Horatio and began devouring him once more. Just yards away, Michael had found one of the rifle rounds on the ground and reloaded the gun. He aimed at the bear's chest and fired. The bear stumbled backwards and fell to the ground, still and motionless. Michael and Andrew, both severely injured themselves, raced over to Horatio's tent. It lay in pieces on the ground. Underneath it was Horatio. He wasn't moving, he wasn't breathing. He hadn't survived the attack. The terrifying attack was a devastating end of one young man's life. Though the others went on to make a full physical recovery, the scars from that day run deep. Although the British Schools Exploring Society wasn't held criminally responsible for Horatio's tragic death, there was a catalog of errors that led to it. The Mauser 98K rifle had a 3-position safety catch mechanism, which meant that rounds could be ejected if fired with the catch in the highest position. This is likely what had happened when Michael tried to shoot the bear the first time. Having another rifle could have put an end to the attack sooner. 2 rifles per group was a condition of the risk assessment Horatio's mother had pored over only a few months before. The faulty tripwires, although notoriously unreliable, were lacking their triggers and stakes and didn't work when they were needed the most. And a night bear watch would have given warning of an approaching bear. It was clear to Horatio's devastated family that this bear attack could have been avoided.